to today's debate between the two Democratic candidates in Wisconsin's 1st Congressional District race. I am Tim Bremel, host of your talk show on WCLO Radio in Janesville, Wisconsin. I'll be serving as your moderator today. We'd also like to welcome the team from Wisconsin Eye, who will be providing video coverage and streaming at two locations for you, wiseye.org/live or facebook.com/WisconsinEye. You can also view a live video stream on the WCLO Facebook page. Today's debate will begin with 60-second opening statements from each of our candidates. We will then explore various areas of interest with the candidates, who will each have 90 seconds for their initial response, with the opportunity for a 30-second follow-up. A timer is seated here at the moderator's table with a clock which will change from green to yellow as a 30-second warning, and will change again to red with 15 seconds of time remaining for the initial answers. For the follow-ups, the clock will change to yellow at 10 seconds remaining and red at 5 seconds. While we're hopeful that our candidates will give as much detail as possible in their answers, we will ask that in the spirit of cooperation and to keep the broadcast on schedule, that they stick to the time limits for today's debate. Now I'd ask the audience in attendance to help us welcome today's guests and Democratic candidates in the 1st Congressional District of Wisconsin, Cathy Myers and Randy Bryce. And as our candidates take their positions, we'll be covering a number of topic areas today, many on the federal level, obviously, but some that may hit a little closer to home as well. And again, we'll hope that you, in 90 seconds, which is not a lot of time, can provide our audience with some details on how you would approach each of these areas. Are our candidates ready?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. We will start with a question that is as much local, certainly to the 1st Congressional District, as it is federal. We'll begin with Cathy Myers. Cathy, one of the biggest controversies, actually, I'm sorry, I need to give you your 60 seconds. I was so eager to get to your answers, I need to give you your 60-second introduction. So let's begin with those. Cathy, go ahead and give us your 60-second introduction.
Well, thank you, Tim, and thank Wisconsin Eye for this opportunity, and thank you, WCLO. This is really wonderful. I know that voters have an important decision to make on August 14th. We need to make sure that we have a candidate coming out of the primary who can not only win in November, but can also serve to provide relief for the families of the 1st Congressional District. And I have 5 years of experience serving the public. I have reviewed budgets, I've built coalitions, and I brought about reforms that 5 years earlier were unheard of. I'm running to help the families of Wisconsin's 1st Congressional District put food on the table, and I understand that because as a single mom, I too have had to make ends meet. I want to bring health care to the families here, make sure that we have quality education and a clean environment, and I especially want to make sure that our workers in the 1st Congressional District have jobs that pay them a living wage so that they can enjoy the families that they're raising. So thank you very much.
All right, and Randy Bryce.
I want to thank you, Tim Bremel, and WCLO, Wisconsin Eye, everybody for being here, for hosting this, and I'm very excited to be at the Rock County Fair. Thank you, Cathy, for being here as well. I'm running for Congress because working people in southeastern Wisconsin are getting a raw deal. We know they're getting a raw deal because we see it. When our neighbors have to work multiple jobs to support their families, when our kids ask if they'll be able to afford a college education, or when our parents lose sleep over the cost of their medical bills. The average member of Congress is a millionaire. They have no idea what it means to be a working person in Wisconsin today. But I do. I'll fight to protect our jobs and make sure that all workers earn a livable wage. I'll fight to make health care a right and not a privilege. And I'll fight to strengthen our schools and make college affordable. Listen, I'm not going to give you the most polished answer, but I can tell you that I won't answer to the billionaires and special interests that have controlled Congress for far too long. The first thing I will do when I'm in Washington is listen to the people of southeastern Wisconsin. That's why I'm running, to fight for all of us.
All right, again, Randy and Cathy, thank you so much for joining us today. Now let's jump into the questions. We'll start with one that, again, is as much local as it is federal, beginning with Cathy. One of the biggest controversies in the 1st Congressional District remains the Foxconn development. While a state issue in its funding, should there be some federal oversight on the use of taxpayer dollars to subsidize independent business development, and why or why not? Cathy?
Thank you. Well, that is a good idea, honestly, because the Foxconn deal is a terrible, terrible deal for Wisconsin voters and for Wisconsin taxpayers. It is a $4.5 billion giveaway, and it is going to be something that we are on the hook for generations. And there's not a whole lot you can do right now at the federal level about it, except that we can push to make sure that EPA regulations, that we stop the rollback of EPA regulations and insist that the corporations that come to Wisconsin don't pollute our air and water and don't leave us with, the cost of that to our families. We also need to rethink how we deal with investment in this state and in this country. So Foxconn is a $4.5 billion giveaway. What will attract businesses is an investment in infrastructure and in quality education and technical education to help train workers for these jobs, making sure that our roads and bridges are in good shape, and investing in our communities. That's what will attract business. We don't have to give away the farm like we did with Foxconn.
All right, Mr. Bryce.
Foxconn is getting $4.5 billion of state taxpayer money. I would love to see some more federal involvement in it for the fact alone that state has taken away all kinds of protections that help Wisconsin workers, whether it's the removal of prevailing wage, taking away project labor agreements on jobs that have state money involved with it. Just driving here this morning, we hit a lot of Scott holes. That's money that could be used to fix our roads. Being a union iron worker, I've worked on our infrastructure, and I know what kind of condition our bridges and roads are in. It's amazing that we have all kinds of money to widen the lanes for Foxconn from General Mitchell Field to the Foxconn facility, but we don't have enough money to fix the roads and bridges that our families drive upon every day. One of the first things Scott Walker did when he was elected was remove almost $1 billion away from public education. This is 4.5 times that amount, and it just shows the priorities. What we need to do is make sure that the money is being used, that Wisconsin residents are going to benefit from this, because again, these extremist Republicans in the state of Wisconsin have removed protections to make sure that Wisconsin workers will see something. On a federal level, we do need to make sure that environmental protections are kept in place, because they want to use millions of gallons of water from one of our most precious resources, Lake Michigan.
All right, an opportunity for follow-up, 30 seconds to Cathy Myers.
Well, I would agree that we need to invest in infrastructure, but also we need to be looking toward the future, at the jobs of the future, and I believe that we need to be investing in clean energy and jobs and manufacturing along the lines of solar panels and wind turbines and that sort of thing. That is the fastest growing sector in this country right now. It is a grand opportunity for us here, especially in the 1st Congressional District, where we are capable of manufacturing. We know how to do it.
And Mr. Bryce, your 30-second follow-up.
Yeah, absolutely. When I do speak of infrastructure, it's not just roads and bridges, but Ironworkers Local 8 wrote the book on how to install and erect wind turbines. Since the state stopped putting them up, thanks to fossil fuel industry making all kinds of donations, we've been unable to do that. Building trades are going to benefit from this, but the main thing is to make sure that everybody gets some positive benefits out of the Foxconn deal.
Thank you, candidates. Our next question will go to Mr. Bryce first. You have both advocated for a Medicare for all type of healthcare system at the federal level. With the current funding problems facing our existing Medicare program, please discuss how such a system would be financed and how much of an American's paycheck would essentially have to become a tax instead of an insurance premium in order to convert and financially support such a system.
Let me give you a number, $1.5 trillion. That's money that was given to the wealthiest people in this country. And right after that, we're told now we can't afford Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. The priorities in the United States government is messed up. We can't afford it. Medicare for all is, when we're talking medical issues, it's something that's near and dear to my heart. Being a cancer survivor and having survived cancer without having insurance, I know what it's like. My mother has multiple sclerosis. It takes her 20 medications per month to get by. My dad has Alzheimer's. It's a huge issue. And people say, you know, what good is medical care now if it's too expensive to use? People talk about more taxes. Well, right now we have premiums. And often, premiums or just going to see a doctor is more expensive. Just being alive shouldn't be a decision, you know, that people can't afford. I have a cousin that's not going to be here next year because she has cancer. She knows it. She can't afford to live. That's something I find very offensive in the United States of America today, the wealthiest country in the world. We can afford it for everybody, and it will be more affordable for everybody. The fact is now people that don't have insurance, the added cost gets added onto our premiums and what we pay now. So one way or another, people are going to have medical attention, and we're going to be paying for it. Medicare for all is the right solution. It's going to save taxpayers money.
Kathy Myers, your thoughts on Medicare for all and its funding?
So I believe that health care is a human right. And I reject all ideas that we cannot provide health care and make sure that everybody can get health care in this country. I think this was evident how important this situation is when Paul Ryan proposed his health care plan a little over a year ago that would have taken 23 million people off of health care, people with pre-existing conditions like me and probably almost everybody in the audience right now. And so health care for all or Medicare for all is possible. It might require some investment from the taxpayers, but you're not going to be paying premiums. Plus, it's going to bring costs down because once you widen the pool of people within the insurance realm, you bring costs down. Plus, it'll also be far more efficient than what we have right now. Just talk with anybody in the medical community about billing and how complicated it is. It will also increase productivity in this country. And that means that people will be able to work more, people will be able to earn more, and companies will be able to, without an employer-based system, companies will be able to invest in their workers more and in their product. And so this is a long overdue program and idea, and I think it's very possible.
A 30-second follow-up to Mr. Bryce.
Not only is it the right thing to do medically for everybody, but it's also a business opportunity. Because one of the problems when I talk to people that want to open up a small business is talking about medical care and the need for insurance. Right now, the ironworkers' health care, we're self-insured. Our system consists of hiring an administrator to turn down our members' claims. That's ridiculous. There has to be a profit in it in order for it to succeed. That doesn't need to be the case. Once we have Medicare for all, it'll be one less hurdle for a small business owner to start up.
And Kathy Myers, your 30-second follow-up.
So yes, that it would be an incredible boon to small businesses. As a matter of fact, I've even spoken with the Ford Janesville, which is the Chamber of Commerce here. And I got a lot of affirmation from the people there that getting rid of the employer-based healthcare system is in the best interest of small businesses. They would like to have that kind of relief. My family owned a small business. I'm on the Janesville School Board, where every year we work on trying to make sure that we can protect benefits. It gets harder and harder all the time.
All right, the next question is a little bit personal, but it goes to the issue of Americans and their trust of elected officials. So as you both know, you're now in a campaign. Negative campaign ads have become the weapon of choice, and you have both been targets of some unfavorable coverage. Ms. Myers, among other things, questions have been raised on out-of-state property tax deductions taken while you were a resident of Wisconsin, and you were recently arrested for obstruction of a public roadway while attending a protest in Racine. Mr. Bryce, you have a number of court judgments, and some questions have been raised on some delinquent payments to a former girlfriend and a delinquent child support payment. We'd like to give each of you the opportunity to address these items directly to the voters of the 1st Congressional District. We'll start again with Kathy.
Thank you. And it's very true that tens of millions of dollars are going to be spent on negative advertising funded by billionaires that support Paul Ryan and his hand-picked successor. And as far as my tax situation, the first thing I did was to get a second opinion on that and discover that everything was in order. We even reached out to the tax assessor's office to make sure that they didn't need any additional documentation from us. The difference here is that when Paul Ryan's billionaire donors start funding PACs and ads to attack negatively, they're going to be lying about me. They're not going to be lying about Mr. Bryce. Because that's all been published. All those arrests and everything have been published. And by the way, as far as arrests are concerned, I was really proud to be arrested with Randy in support of our dreamers. That's important. But they won't have to lie, and they will have to lie about me, and we can fight the falsehoods with more information and with running an aggressive campaign.
Mr. Bryce?
When I've talked with members of Congress who have endorsed our campaign, they have told us that the Republicans were going to be counting on their tax plan in order to run in November for the midterms. That being hugely unsuccessful, we're told to be expecting attack ads, which we're seeing. I'm proud of the fact that our campaign has signed the Democratic Party of Wisconsin's Badger Pledge, which says that we're not going to attack other Democratic candidates. I like to say our campaign is about construction, not demolition. This race is too important to have internal fighting, which is why we're building a movement. It's not just about our race, but it's about taking back control of Congress. I did have some issues. 20 years ago, I was arrested for an OUI in Upper Michigan. I've readily admitted that I was at fault. If I would try to explain any kind of circumstances that took place around it, it would be trying to come up with an excuse. The fact is, I learned in the Army, when you mess up, you just say there's no excuse. I've learned from it. It's something that won't happen again, hasn't happened since. And now I have an 11-year-old, soon-to-be 12-year-old son. I'm trying to be the best role model I can for him. But when it comes to former issues in the past, I'd like to see more elected officials say, yes, I'm not perfect. As a matter of fact, if people were perfect, we wouldn't need to elect members of Congress to pass legislation for us. So anything I've done that I've done wrong in the past or will do in the future, I'm ready to accept responsibility for my own actions, learn, and move on.
All right, a 30-second follow-up from Cathy Myers.
Well, I too am not perfect, but I have not been arrested 9 times. I also have filed recently an FEC complaint about the practices, fundraising practices and payments from my competitor's campaign. We need to establish an ethical standard, especially in regards to campaign finance. Here's the thing. That money that donors give you to buy everything from high-priced ads to paper clips is not your money, and you cannot use it for personal use.
Your 30-second follow-up, Mr. Bryce.
I'm looking forward to the FEC dismissing the said complaint. I haven't seen it yet, but I can guarantee that we have not done anything unethical running for office.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bryce, you'll address the next topic first. You have both supported in some way a $15 an hour minimum wage. Many small businesses pay significantly more than the current federal minimum wage, but far less than that $15 an hour you suggest. So let me give you a scenario and ask you to address that in that context. If a business currently paid their employees, say $10 an hour, moving to $15 an hour, they'd have to digest roughly $40 per day per full-time employee into their business model somehow. How would you address that business's concern? Again, we'll start with Mr. Bryce.
Well, $15 an hour or a livable wage is something that should be the bare basement minimum. Because if people aren't getting any kind of government assistance, that's a good thing. If people need government assistance in order to get by, if they're working a full-time job, that's unacceptable. Then it's the business that's getting the assistance. Looking at something, Walmart could pay everybody $15 an hour if you take the product that they sell the most of, which is macaroni and cheese. You raise the price of that by 1 penny. That's going to be enough to be able to pay your employees $15 an hour. And I can't remember how many hundreds of thousands of dollars one Walmart superstore costs in taxpayer money just to subsidize their employees. That's not right. We're going to pay for it one way or another. Let's give people dignity. Let's pay people what they're worth, because if you're working full-time trying to get by, you shouldn't need government assistance.
Cathy Myers.
I think we need to start respecting people's work in this country, and that means that they should be able to earn a living wage. There is absolutely no excuse for corporations in this country to not pay at least $15 an hour. We subsidize the workers that are not being paid that through food stamps and Medicare already. So basically, we're giving a corporate subsidy to make sure that people are not earning a living wage and damaging our economy. Now, for small business people, we could phase in the $15 minimum wage. And then once we do this, we need to index it to inflation so that we're not playing this catch-up, game, 10 years down the road like we are now. And so we need to have thoughtful, progressive approaches to the way that we pay people in this country. It is not in our best interest for people who work for, especially for large corporations, to not earn at least a minimum wage. In this state, 1 in 4 workers is working poor. And we are picking up the tab for that so that Walmart can pay its CEOs even more money.
In your follow-ups, again, I'll be the business. You're telling me to go from $10 to $15 an hour. I'm asking you how I'm supposed to do that, Mr. Bryce.
Well, when you pay people more, when you pay them that extra $5, they're going to have more disposable income. Right now, when you're not making $15 an hour, not having a livable wage, you're scraping by. You're saving every penny that you have because you don't know when you're going to be able to pay your bills. So when you have more disposable income, you're going to go buy more things. That's going to create more jobs. It's going to create more of a demand. So by paying your workers what they're worth, not only are you not going to need government assistance to help them get by, they're going to feel better about their situation, but they're going to be able to buy things and contribute to the economy.
All right, Cathy?
When I spoke with the members of Forward Janesville, I talked about this too. And I did talk about phasing it in, over time for small businesses. My family, we ran a small business. I understand the impact of major changes, and they can prepare for those things. But, we need to think holistically about things as well. And so if we are offering Medicare for all and scaling back the employer-based healthcare system and eliminating it, that's more money that they can invest in their employees and make sure that they pay them a living wage.
Thank you both. Cathy, you'll start our next discussion on immigration. Far too complex to resolve in 90-second responses, so please give the voters your positions on the following aspects of the current immigration debate. 1, what would your process be to deal with the Dreamers? 2, would your policy regarding anyone requesting asylum, what would it be, regardless of how they chose to actually enter our country? And 3, who, without legal status in our country, would you advocate to immediately deport, if anybody? Cathy?
So the situation at the border, I think, has been handled atrociously. It is cruel, inhumane, and there are ways to that we should have been handling it. The Trump administration's separation of families was a choice. It didn't have to happen. I believe for the Dreamers that we need a path to citizenship. They are already, an integral part of our communities. They are working here, they're going to school, they're in our military, and we need to provide them with a path to citizenship. As far as people that are seeking asylum, you have the right to seek asylum. And, it's an important process. It's an important thing that you can do here. The way that the Trump administration should have handled things is by providing more federal judges down there to process claims and to verify claims. They could have done that by simply staffing. And another thing that could possibly eliminate some of the problems that we're having is by making sure we have a fully functioning State Department. You know that we don't even have ambassadors in several countries in Central America. This has been mismanagement at the highest level, and the cost to human beings is terrible.
Mr. Bryce.
First of all, we need to pass a Clean Dream Act. No ifs, ands, or buts. We were told Congress was going to pass one February 5th. They didn't. That's why I chose to get arrested, standing up for them. Part of the reason that you can stay a Dreamer is if you don't have any arrest record, which is one of the reasons why we took that action, to show them we stand with you. And not only do I want a Clean Dream Act, but I want to see DAPA passed, which is something that's going to protect and create a pathway to citizenship for the parents. I'll never forget hearing the story of a young high school woman talking about going to school. and being terrified of having ICE agents come in and take her out of her classroom. Or if she does make it through a day of school, returning home only to see that her door had been kicked in and ICE had removed her dad and sent him to some detention facility. Immigration was one of the reasons why I first got into this race. Voces de la Frontera, a group which has endorsed our campaign, I've worked very closely with them on this issue. When it comes to asylum, how can we turn our backs on somebody seeking just the ability to survive? These are people fleeing their country. I mean, I spent time in Honduras in the Army. It's gotten to be one of the most dangerous places in the world. So when we have somebody coming from Honduras up here bringing their family who just wants to exist, that's not a crime. We need to stop treating people that want to come here and achieve the American dream that so many of us are finding harder and harder to get now. Make that more achievable for everybody. We can do it. There is enough for everybody to go around.
All right. I realize it was a long question. So item number 3 in your follow-ups, who without legal status in our country would you advocate to deport immediately, if anyone?
Oh, I believe that. Oh, is that to me this time?
Yeah, back to you,
Okay,
Cathy,
sorry.
for a follow-up.
Thank you. So yeah, I do believe that if people are, convicted criminals, then they should be deported. But what has happened here is the use of ICE it's become a rogue agency, and it needs to be put under the purview of the Justice Department, where it used to be. My primary opponent has called for the abolition of ICE. I think that's a hashtag. That's not a policy. And we need to have a thorough policy in dealing with our immigrants and anybody that is criminally convicted.
Mr. Bryce.
I would deport anybody that has a felony on their record. Again, seeking asylum is not a crime. Mm-hmm. And I have been one of the proud early supporters of abolishing ICE. Putting under the justice system, under Jeff Sessions, who has quite a long history, not in a good way, of dealing with people of color, that's not someplace I want to see ICE put. And right now, it's just being used as a deportation force for Donald Trump. When you bring up the word ICE in the immigrant community, you just see children's faces light up in terror. That's not the way we want our government to be perceived.
Thank you, candidates. We will turn our next question to you, Randy Bryce, first. The area of campaign finance, which we touched on briefly. George Soros and the Koch brothers, each party has their arch nemesis to point to when they're discussing campaign finances. What is your plan to deal with the overall issue of money in politics, and how would you go about garnering enough support to pass your plan?
Well, I'm proud to have the endorsement of End Citizens United. We need campaign finance reform, and one of the things we need to do is overturn Citizens United. Big money has played a huge issue in the race, and that's why when we first started off, we said we're not going to take money from Wall Street, from the fossil fuel industries. We're not taking any money from Big Pharma, and we're also not taking any money from the NRA. These are organizations that give you money and want something in return. I'm proud to say that our campaign has raised over $6 million at over 120,000 donors throughout the country and in the district. And, average contribution is $25. That's a lot of support. And that's coming from the people who know that I'm going to stand up for them. They don't want anything in return other than clean, transparent government. That's what they're going to get. So we need to work together to make sure that ordinary people feel that they can invest in campaigns. We should have elections, not auctions.
Campaign finances, Cathy.
Well, campaign finance is a very serious problem, and it is, and in looking at my primary opponent's campaign, part of the problem is the way that money is laundered and hidden. So while you might accept money from a PAC, that PAC may have accepted money from a corporation and might even be a couple of steps removed at times. And in your case, there's been some corporations that have contributed indirectly to your campaign by that are involved with the separation of families at the border. We need to have transparency. We need to get rid of the dark money in politics. Our campaign has raised $1.2 million. Our average contribution is $23, and it has been done with absolutely no PAC money. It has all been individual contributions. And even people that are giving me whatever they can, and it's been amazing the kind of support that we've got. I have worked with Move to Amend. I believe that we need to make sure we end Citizens United and legislate against it. And I think that the money in politics thing is one of the things that makes people so incredibly cynical about politics. It is to our best interest and to the system's best interest to do what we can to stop it.
A 30-second follow-up to Randy Bryce.
One of the best parts of campaigning is meeting people. Well, the worst parts is asking them for money. I'd love to see some kind of public financing for companies so that we can spend more time talking to people, finding out their issues, not asking them for money. And again, I'm proud of the fact that we have decided who we stand with, who we're not going to take money from, because we're not going to be beholden to anybody except for the voters of Wisconsin's 1st Congressional District.
Cathy, your follow-up?
And we have been beholden only to the voters of Wisconsin's 1st Congressional District, and that we have taken only individual contributions through this whole thing. And you're right. The best part is meeting people. The worst part is having to ask for money. And public financing would go a long way to curbing that. And by the way, that's a bipartisan issue, and we should be working on that.
Thank you, candidates. Cathy, you will get the next question first. There are a number of high-cost issues facing our nation. Crumbling infrastructure, the aforementioned health care issues, looming shortfalls in Social Security and Medicare, and other items. The GOP tax plan has thus far not resulted in an increase in tax dollars. With the deficit currently rising and expected to surpass $1 million by next year, please identify whether you feel we have a spending problem or an income problem, and how you would solve that problem.
Well, the tax plan is terrible, and it needs to be repealed. It was a giveaway to people at the very top. It's a giveaway to them that we are going to be paying for a long time. Taxpayers, average taxpayers, got a little bit of relief this year. It will not happen next year. And of course, the result of the tax plan, the promises made from trickle-down economics, by the way, that's exactly what this is, was that it was going to increase wages and help workers. Wages have remained stagnant. Businesses have not invested in their people as they promised. They have instead been buying back stock to increase dollars for their donors. It is a sham, and we need to repeal that tax plan right away and start investing in our workers in a strong progressive tax program that that makes the top earners earn their fair or pay their fair share of taxes, as opposed to making it the entire efforts here to support our country done on the backs of workers.
Randy Bryce.
We've seen since the 80s when Ronald Reagan was president that trickle-down is a failed experiment. Income inequality has just ballooned up. In Wisconsin right now, the middle class is disappearing faster in Wisconsin than in any other state in the country due to issues like this. When I heard that we gave $1.5 trillion to the richest people in the United States, followed a week later by saying we can't afford things like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, that told me our priorities are really messed up. Especially, you know, I've worked on infrastructure personally for the last 20 years. And I know how to get projects done on time, ahead of budget. And that money could be so much better spent. The thing is it's not the fact that we don't have money, but we have people that are talking about being fiscally responsible that are ballooning up the deficit. And if that's not bad enough, it's the fact that they're just giving money to the donors. We're not getting anything back in return for it. These people aren't investing back into our government. We're not seeing any return whatsoever. All they're doing is saving that money offshore. And it's completely the wrong way to go. We need to make sure that we work the middle class out and then make sure that the working people are the ones that receive the benefits. Because rewarding the rich because of their campaign contributions hasn't done anything except shrink the middle class.
Your follow-up, Cathy?
A very smart person who I've known for several years once told me that budgets are about priorities. And what we have seen with the tax plan and the current budget is it is not about making sure that our country is strong and that people are able to earn a living and you know, invest in our community. It's not about that at all. And so they're using this, of course, for a tax on Social Security and Medicare. I don't know if you know this, but you should look it up, Google it. The trickle-down economics was once called the horse and sparrow plan. You should look it up. It came out during the Gilded Age. And then I want you to think about who's the sparrow and who's the horse.
Randy, your follow-up?
Again, we've just seen it. $1.5 trillion is an incredible amount of money. It is all about priorities, and it's showing people that the middle class is where we need to invest. That's how we got out of the last depression. We got people back to work on projects like our infrastructure. That's a great way. Building trades are a fantastic way to get people, not just a job, it's a career. And it doesn't cost any tax money. You don't have any college loans to repay, and no tax dollars are used. There's opportunities waiting to get all kinds of people back to work.
All right, the next question for you would light up the phone lines on your talk show for the entirety of the show. You're both on record as supporting an initiative to impeach President Trump should you become the district representative. Would you explain your reasoning behind supporting impeachment and address how that would potentially impact the country in a positive or negative way? Randy, you begin.
Well, it seems, every night when I go to sleep and I put the bar on the ground and I think, we can't lower the bar anymore. And then I wake up the next morning and have to grab my shovel and start digging again because there it goes. Donald Trump, we're in a very extraordinary time in our government. And when I saw Donald Trump standing on stage on foreign soil next to Vladimir Putin, talking about his lack of faith in our intelligence community, that just really wowed me. Being a veteran, I've always been in a position to put people over party. This is something that we need to get to the bottom of. There has been evidence. I mean, there are convictions. People have confessed to wrongdoing in the government as far as our past elections. This time, the Republicans benefited from it. Next time, who knows? Is it going to be the Democrats that are going to get helped by Russia? Hopefully nobody, because hopefully people are going to decide that this is an issue we need to stand together on and stop this from happening. We need to make sure that our government is for the people, whether you're Democrat, Republican. It's a nonpartisan issue. And as far as when it comes to checks and balances, Paul Ryan has failed to be the Speaker of the House. He's been Speaker of the White House. And if we had checks and balances used in the manner that they were written into our Constitution, we wouldn't even be talking about impeachment now because we'd have a government working the way it was meant to work.
Cathy.
Our campaign actually looked at this issue back in the fall. I think it was in October, about the emoluments clause. We examined whether or not the emoluments clause could be used to impeach the president or whether he had violated it. And the emoluments clause is about whether the president is going to be enriched from his dealings with foreign nations. And the fact that our president has not divested himself of his businesses, for the fact that his children are benefiting from foreign entities is a real problem. And I think that that is cause that could be cause for impeachment and something that I would certainly be willing to vote for. But beyond that, I think I'm really looking forward to seeing what Robert Mueller comes up with to see if there is a case to be made for obstruction of justice as well. I think if there's one thing that we can all unite around is that character matters. And it matters who's in charge. It matters how they are, whether or not they are serving us or their own interests. And I think that the Trump administration has consistently shown that it's only interested in itself. The president is only interested in his businesses and his families and protecting himself. And that's wrong, and it doesn't serve the public.
Randy?
We definitely need to make sure that the Mueller investigation is allowed to run its course. And we need to get people from both sides of the aisle behind it to allow that to happen. There was talk about writing some legislation that will make that so. I'm in favor of it. And when it comes as far as the impeachment of Trump, we're going to need a majority in the Senate as well. I would much prefer that Congress just do their job and stand up to Donald Trump so that we don't need to go that far. It's an embarrassment that our government is in this position, but it is. And we need leadership that's going to stand up to make things right. Because
and your follow-up, Cathy. I'm sorry. Your follow-up, Cathy.
Well, I would just reiterate that when you elect somebody, you are electing them to serve you, not to serve themselves. And we have seen an administration here that is engaged in activities that are totally about self-interest. And it looks like he has crossed the line on several occasions. And so that's why I think we need to hold him accountable.
All right, our final question will go to Cathy Myers first. Regardless of which of you wins the primary, your goal is obviously to become the new 1st District representative to Congress. Based on the extreme polarity that exists in our country and our state, how will you reach out to represent all of the constituents in the district and not just those who might most closely identify with your views? Cathy.
Thank you. That's a great question because, you know, the fact that everybody is in their corner these days is one of the reasons why our government is not functioning the way it should. As a member of the Janesville School Board, I have worked in bipartisan ways. One of the very first things I did was build a coalition to bring a farm-to-school program to the Janesville School District because it is in the best interest of our students to make sure that they have healthy food, and also it helps bring in local farmers and making us part of a larger community that is working together to serve our students. I have reached across the aisle as a member of the school board. I'm also a member of Citizens Climate Lobby, which advocates for bipartisan climate solutions, and I would love to be part of that caucus if I have the privilege of being elected to Congress. I am very willing to talk with people who disagree with me, and maybe it's because it's what I do for a living, but I am very confident in my ability to create a relationship and talk to people who disagree with me and look for common ground at the very get-go so that we can figure out the things we can work on with the idea of working on greater things later.
Mr. Bryce.
Well, I was on-staff organizer for the Ironworkers Local 8 Union. One of my goals is to find out how we get jobs. And so I started going to city council meetings, county board meetings, in order to help get jobs for our membership. Now this was, you know, we have members of our union, some vote Republican, majority vote Democrat, but the things that I did there benefit all. That's what I'm looking forward to doing now once elected, is to bring forth policies. These aren't policies that are going to help Democrats only and punish Republicans. These are policies that are going to help working people, no matter who you vote for, no matter who you have a history of voting for. It's about helping people. It's about building a bigger table. One of the things that I'm very proud of in the 1st District is the campaign that we've been able to build. It's a coalition of the likes of have not been seen in the 1st District. We've been able to unite just incredible elements from all sides of the Democratic Party. I like to say we don't have Bernie people, we don't have Hillary people, we have Randy people. That's what our campaign's about. It's about bringing people together. We talked about building a bigger table. Everybody's welcome here. And we're going to have seats at this table for people that don't even know this table exists.
Cathy, your follow-up.
One of the very first things I did when I got on the Janesville School Board is I figured out who would be most likely to oppose some of the ideas that I had and invite them to breakfast. And so I started the relationships there. I think that we need to be talking with each other like neighbors all the time. And actually, that's how I intend to serve. When I'm elected, I am going to be in coffee shops throughout the 1st Congressional District on a regular basis just to talk, not to provide the usual dog and pony show, PowerPoint, and lecture series that we've seen before, but actually have conversations.
And your follow-up, Mr. Bryce.
Running for office is about putting people over party. As a veteran and as an ironworker, I've been in life and death situations where I trust people that I don't always agree with on every particular issue to have my back, and I've been in a position to have their back. Once elected, I'm looking forward to having public town hall meetings every year in every district to make sure that people are heard. That's the biggest problem that we have right now, is that people don't feel they have a voice. People do have a voice, and we need to make sure that they have an active participation and get involved in the election in November.
The next portion here is not necessarily a question. It's up to you. I know you've got probably some prepared closing statements, which we'll get to next, but moderators often take great joy in controlling all the questions. So I want to give you each 90 seconds to take that time to speak to your voters as to what is driving your campaign, what you are the absolute most passionate about, and what you really want to see changed in Washington if you are elected. We'll start with Randy.
When I first became politically active was after Scott Walker was elected governor, and I saw how they proceeded to carve up the state, gerrymandering, voter suppression, and attacks on working people with their legislation. That hasn't stopped. So when it came to the point I saw Paul Ryan talking about taking away our health care on the job site, I was talking with the other coworkers, and I was like, you know what? I'm sick of hearing about him trying to repeal and replace something so valuable to us, our health care. Let's repeal and replace him. And health care just been a huge issue. For myself, being a cancer survivor, I mean, I know there are other people out there that have gone through this too, but being diagnosed with a life-threatening illness when you don't have insurance, even though you're working 2 full-time jobs, is a very terrifying place to be. And talking with other people, a woman who was telling me a story about going to talk to a pharmacist. She's like, I need to buy 10 medications. I can only afford 3 of them. Which 3 will affect me the most, can keep me alive? That's a crazy place to be. It's not the fact that we can't afford something for people. It's the point that we're ignoring people. We're not giving them a voice. We're not listening to them. And we're discarding those that we find need a hand up. We need to lift those people up because there's going to be a time in our lives when we need a hand up. So it's about carrying people that need to be carried because they're the ones that are going to carry us when we need to be helped.
And Cathy Myers, 90 seconds on anything your heart desires.
So I was raised in a family that talked about public service every night at the dinner table. And I was raised on that idea that we need to give back, that we need to support our community and be involved in it. And I have dedicated my life to that. I have been my union president and vice president, and I've stood up for workers when I was on strike in 2003. I stood up for my students when they wanted to start a gay-straight alliance at my school under tremendous pressure. And Janesville, I have stood up for teachers and staff and students on the Janesville School Board. And as a member of the advisory committee here, I've worked to try to decentralize or to spread out the involvement of people and get more diversity on our committees in this town. I want to go to Washington to get things done, and healthcare is important, and public education is important. But one thing we haven't brought up here is working on bipartisan efforts to get rid of the gun problem in this country and work on gun control. Our plan for gun control includes banning military-style assault weapons in high-capacity magazines and installing and making sure that we have universal background checks and closing loopholes so that the domestic abusers cannot get a gun. This is something that is supported by a wide variety of Americans, not just Democrats. It's a bipartisan issue, and that'll be one of the first things I work on.
Thank you both. That concludes the questioning for today's debate. We'd like to thank our candidates for sharing their views with the voters. We will finish up today with 60-second closing statements from our candidates, beginning with Cathy Myers.
Thank you. Thank you again for this opportunity. Thank you, Wisconsin I, and thanks for everybody who's listening. I know that voters have a very serious choice on August 14th. We're going to face tens of millions of dollars of dark money in attack ads coming from Paul Ryan's donors, their billionaire donors. We need to make sure that we select someone out of the primary who can not only win in November, but is also the best person to serve us. We need candidates that don't rely on special interest money and get the money out of politics. We know that there are going to be these attack ads on us, and I know that when they do attack ads against me, it's going to be false. My primary opponent cannot say the same thing. They're going to use a lot against him, and we need to have, if we want someone that can not only win, but can serve in past November, we need to make sure that we have the strong candidate coming out of the primary in August. I am humbly asking for your vote on August 14th. I know that I'm the best person to win in November, and I just want to thank you one more time for this opportunity.
And Randy Bryce, your closing statement.
I'd like to also start off by thanking everybody for being here. I got in this race for one reason, to repeal and replace Paul Ryan. Today I'm proud to say that thanks to our campaign and your support, we've achieved half of that goal. But the job isn't finished yet. Because while Paul Ryan may not be on the ballot in November, his anti-worker agenda will be. In this election, the voters of Southeast Wisconsin have a choice. We can elect another politician who values corporate profits over workers' rights, who supports tax breaks for the rich, but not a fair living wage, and who would continue Paul Ryan's attacks on our retirement and health care. Or we can elect someone who understands the challenges that working people face, someone who actually lived them. And the people are behind me, have the endorsements from the AFL-CIO, NARAL, Giffords PAC, Progressive Change Campaign Coalition, United Auto Workers, and Southern Wisconsin Building Trades Council, as well as elected officials from across the country. But our fight is far from over. That's why I'm asking for your support. Together, we repealed Paul Ryan. In November, we can finally replace him and give Wisconsin's working people the representation that we deserve. Thank you.
We want to thank our candidates for sharing their time and their views with us today, addressing many of the concerns of the voters in Wisconsin's 1st Congressional District. We also want to thank those of you who are here in attendance at the Rock County 4-H Fair, listening on the radio or watching on Wisconsin Eye. We encourage you to continue learning about all the candidates in the upcoming April 14th primary and be sure to vote. You've been part of a special candidates debate between Cathy Myers and Randy Bryce, Democratic candidates in Wisconsin's 1st Congressional District, on Wisconsin Eye and on WCLO Janesville Beloit. Thank you for being here. Thank you.